Welcome back to another episode of War Hero to Superhero, helping military veterans and first responders transform their lives from the prayer room to the boardroom. You know my name, you know the host, and everything else. It's not about me when we're in this superhero battle room. We are with Lee Stiles. If I hacked her last name, she's going to correct me when we get live on there. That is my superpower of hacking names, no matter how it's spelled. But we always get the message out there. She is a military woman who has transformed her life by helping others combat the battlefield of the mind and the body. Isn't that a most powerful thing? She's going to talk more about it, and she's going to go over and deliver this beautiful message on forward. So I'm going to bring her on the screen. Hey, do I have you?
You got me.
Did I pronounce your name right? Because my superpower usually fails me epically.
The last name you got right. The first name is Leah.
Leah, see, man, the English language always befuddles me. I think I'm just going to have to start speaking Hebrew. So
Or you could just
maybe I'll
call me
have
by the
both.
last name since you got that right. In the military, that's what we do anyways.
Yeah, I still do that to this day. Like when you go to like the pizza place or whatever, and they're like, "What's your name?" Just go by Faust. I mean, just let it be. And Daniel is spelled many different ways, and people want to call you Dan or Danny or sometimes Ben, and I don't get that one at all. I'm like, I don't even look like a Ben, but you know. So let's get into your story because it's not about me, it's about you. We're going to talk about first of what inspired you to join the military either many months or many moons ago.
Many moons ago, over, gosh, 24 years now. I think I joined the military because I was looking for a family. And, I grew up in the foster care system and bounced all around and lived without a lot of structure. And so I came looking for the structure. And when I spoke to the Navy recruiter and they told me that the Navy was like a family, that was a key word for me. And I was like, sign me right up.
Wow, you're actually the first like professed foster child I've met on all my interviews on the show. Is that a common? Have you met other people that were foster children in the system and then kind of went in the military?
Yes, actually there are a lot of us. I am finding that now, especially, in the work that I'm doing now, looking backwards, I can see that the military has been an answer to a lot of people that had a rough or unstructured upbringing because of what it offers. What does it offer? Education, right? It offers regular medical and regular pay and training, and for somebody that didn't have a lot of structure growing up, I can absolutely see so many people that have been drawn to what the military does offer.
That's interesting. Do you think that you saw more maybe in the branch of service that you're in compared to others? Because I've been Air Force my entire life. I've visited other branches for different TDYs and whatnot. But do you think like maybe like the Navy or Marines, it's like, oh, maybe there's more foster because you're always traveling and things are changing, and maybe the foster system is a traveling and changing ecosystem?
That's a really good perspective. I've never thought about that. But that would make for some good research. I'd be interested to find out if one branch has more previous foster children than others. That would be really interesting.
Yeah, I just think I'm like, the Air Force is kind of stable. And as we get more broke each and every year, we PCS less. I mean, supposed they're going to be cutting at least, I'm retiring in 51 days, but they're cutting our budget again another 40%. So we're going to be going nowhere for a while. So I'm just curious if it's like, at least with the Navy, you get to go places. That's part of the spiel that the Air Force is like, hey, you're gonna stay in the same spot. The aircraft goes away, but you're gonna be here. So I was just curious in that mindset.
I tried to join the Air Force first. I knew I wanted to be a photographer, and I kept trying to meet with the Air Force recruiter. And you'll find this kind of funny, but every time I went, he was at lunch in the morning, the afternoon. Air Force recruiter was at lunch, and finally, like the fourth or fifth time that I was trying to find the Air Force recruiter, the Navy recruiter was like, "Psst, come here. We have
Oh yeah.
photographers." And I was like, "You have photographers?" And that was it. They got me.
No, I would agree. My son was gonna go Air Force. We met with the recruiter once, and then he was never there. It has been carrying from generation to generation. For me, the Air Force was more on a girl. I've told this story in the past, but real quick, I had a crush on a girl. She wanted to go to the recruiter. I wasn't even interested. I went to the recruiter to basically tell her that, hey, let's date. And she's like, nope, I already have a boyfriend. Crushed my heart. And I got more interested in the recruiter's office and she got less interested. And she told me this amazing statement, which is self fulfillment prophecy. If I leave my boyfriend, I'm going to go over and separate from him. It happened. I mean, if you're already calling it yourself, I'm like, and God gave me this, and I said it doesn't matter the distance or anything else. If you two are committed, it doesn't matter what goes over and happens. You'll stay together, and that's what's kept that and God from my marriage for the past 18 years. So it was kind of interesting that she went to the Navy and then I went to the Air Force. So it was a totally different world. So it's very interesting on recruiting stories. So photography, was that the main thing, like high school, college, or was it one of those things the recruiter told you about the job and you got excited about it?
It was a passion from high school and my part-time jobs that I took. I was a photographer. I was a photographer at Walmart and then J.C. Penney's. And I knew that I loved photography, but I wasn't sure how to make it like a sustainable career. And so then when I figured out that the military offered that, it was the combination of like to me the best of both worlds.
Oh, wow. So part-time, really? I would think like I remember in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, like those places were booming. Like kids were they're dragging the parents behind that fake background and everything else when green screens weren't common. I thought it was cool for the what was behind us, but outside of that, you're like, do I have to pose this way? Do I have to dress in like more buttons than I need? And those photographers knew how to get you to smile. And like I already have RBF. I call it resurrected blessed face. That's what I call it now. But it's like I don't smile unless I'm actually laughing. So those photographers knew how to take that Amtrak derailment and make it look beautiful. So I give kudos to anybody that's a photographer.
It was definitely a really cool experience, especially in the Navy and the variety of different opportunities that it afforded me and the places I got to go. I've taken pictures everywhere from the flight deck of an aircraft carrier at sunset with jets launching off to meeting different celebrities and being their photographers, being a presidential photographer for a day. That was really amazing. So it definitely afforded some pretty cool opportunities.
See, this is where I connect with you so I can get some more better green screens in that particular thing because, we have the superhero battle room, but it'd be kind of cool. Like if I have a Navy person on or an Air Force person on, have like a background that kind of represents them and everything else. So if you got any like really high res photos, I would love to have one.
I got to go to Divid's Hub, and that's where all of the military photographers upload all of their photos and videos, and they're for use. They want you to use them, so you can check out the coolest photos at Divid's Hub. For part of my time as a photographer, some of the things I took photos of weren't for public use or to be published or were more to be the eyes in the Pentagon. So not everything does get published there, but everything that is published on Divots Hub is up for use and some pretty cool stuff there.
That's really cool. Hopefully, a sunset is for public use because I love sunsets.
Yes.
Yeah, because that'd be kind of wrong. They're like taking God's landscape. This is not for private, only for private use. I'm like, really? I'm like,
It
I'm
wouldn't
pretty
be
sure the
it
rest.
wouldn't be up there if it wasn't good to go. But yeah, you could just search sunsets on Divids, and you'll find some pretty cool things, especially from the aircraft carriers or from some of the jets.
That's really awesome. I'll have to go search that later, and hopefully the AI picks that up so I can get that website. Real cool. So let's go into more about that's where you started. How long were you in, and when did you leave?
So I was in for 20 years. I retired right at my 20. I retired as a senior chief. What's pretty cool is I met my husband in A school. And my first day of A school at Fort Meade, Maryland was actually 9/11. That was my first day. And then my husband and I, 20 years later, we were able to align our retirement dates and we retired the very same day.
Wow. That should have been like behind like a massive photo and then show like a wedding montage from like the first kiss to the last kiss in the sense of the military because you met in the military and you're still together in the military. That'd be like a really cool like montage. So did you get a chance to do any like montage video thing or photos for your like retirement?
So we retired during COVID, so it was a little bit of a smaller ceremony than we expected, but we had some pretty cool photos and some combinations of our photos throughout our time there. That was really nice to see the evolution of time. And at the time that we retired, our son had just joined. He's active duty in the Navy now, so it was we got to get our last photo of all three of us in uniform. That was really nice.
That's really awesome. I was hoping to burn my uniforms, but I found out I can't. That was going to be my ceremony because I leave 18 October, but I can't. So I'm just going to do a bonfire that day at the beach and culminate. And maybe I can find something that's I can burn because burning is just cool. And those photos and videos are fantastic. It's like sunsets and burning. I'm not sure why, but they bring such pleasure. So hopefully I can see the sunset as I'm burning something. But yeah, if I can find some reg to burn a uniform, oh yeah, I'd do it in a heartbeat. So so 20 years exactly, man. Met your spouse, had a beautiful career and everything else. And you both could be retired. You both could just be fading into the sunset, as we're talking about. What made you make this transition into a transformation? Because a lot of us vets usually don't know who they are. Like once we get out, and especially the ladies, it's so much harder to know because transform makeup, hair, different career. They usually have like 18,000 degrees. I'm usually way behind them and everything else. So what made you to go from a transition to a transformation after the retirement?
So, Daniel, I can definitely relate to that. When I first retired, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I tried a few different things. I tried a 9 to 5 job. That did not feel well for me. That didn't feel good at all. It didn't feel like I was living in my purpose. I became an insurance salesman, which now looking back, I'm like, oh, that does not align to me at all. I wasn't really, I don't know why I took that route. But I tried it and I found myself just being miserable every day, going to work and just watching the clock tick away. I wanted each day to be done. And I wasn't really sure, right? You know, we talk about when we're retiring, how we lose that piece of our identity. I mean, I was a senior chief. I was called senior chief all the time. That was my
Mhm.
title. That was my name, you know, and so losing that part of my identity, and it also aligned at the time where our children were all grown and we're down to just one in the house. And, you know, she's graduating high school and, you know, she's pretty much a roommate at this point, just grown
Yeah.
and independent. So, you know, I was also losing my identity. I felt as a mother while I was empty nesting and parenting. And so that kind of aligned at the same time. And I went through a point where I absolutely struggled. I remember months of sitting on my couch and staring at a blank TV, just day after day, just staring at the blank TV, like just absolutely lost. And this was after trying to have plans and ideas, and I thought that I was ready. And I still truly struggled. And it took honestly talks with a couple of good mentors. I always say that we should have a mentor, at least one, and that we should always be a mentor to at least one. And so that's really what helped me find what my purpose was. And I remember talking to my mentor and saying, you know, there's a gap. There's a gap in care. There's a gap in knowledge. There's a gap in information. There's a gap in resources when it comes to eating disorders in the military community. And I started doing the research and found not only, you know, through my journey of service with an eating disorder for 30 years,
Wow.
that 1/3 of females and 1/5 of males in the military are also struggling with disordered eating or an eating disorder. And I look back on my time and on my service and what was available to me for support and resources, and what was available to my leadership, for them to know how to support me and that part of my life and my journey. And there really just wasn't anything. And so I founded Sea Waves to fill that gap, to be that bridge that I saw that didn't exist. And then I did the research on that. And of the 45,000 veteran service organizations that exist,
Yeah.
none of them are in the eating disorder space. We are the
Wow.
nation's only one.
That is amazing. Yeah, because Veterans to Industry is trying to take all those 45,000 organizations and highlight them and go over and uplift them and brand them. I learned that just recently with working with them last year at the Military Influencer Conference. But yeah, I know people that have eating disorders. My wife had a past eating disorder and all sorts of things. And I've known people. But yeah, when you look at it from a military or a veteran thing, you have 300 diagnoses in the mental health world, and eating disorders is one of them. But it's kind of like just phased out. They assume you're going to have it during a teenage years. You're going to phase out, and then magically turn 18 or 21, and then your brain amygdala goes over and changes, and poof, you're totally fine. But we, as a culture and as a struggle, and especially if you have any, let's say biological tendencies to gain weight, and then you're in the service and you're trying to keep up those PT tests, I could see that struggle because I'm assuming yourself and others, it affects more times like with deployments, PT tests, or just undue stress. So you kind of get encouraged in a sense. Like I remember they talked about those, was it sweatsuits? And they talked about like, just drinking tons of water, like a couple weeks before you do PT tests and different things. So is that where you see your current clients now, that like, that's where, like, if they struggled as a teen and now they go in the military, it makes it worse because the amplification of the body composition?
So that was definitely my story. I had my eating disorder since I was 11, and I thought, that I was better when I joined. And exactly the things that you just said, inherently the military is a breeding ground for eating disorder and disordered behaviors. Exactly the things that you said, or any combination of, can result in an eating disorder. So biological factors, just like you mentioned, stress, trauma, lack of support. And then we do have that extra stigma in culture in the military where we do have to be a certain size or below a certain size, and above a certain size, in that kind of in that range, the standards that we have to meet. And so you're right, in the pursuit of making sure that we meet those standards, we see so many times the behaviors that have been normalized in order to shrink your body to prepare for a body composition assessment. Things that we know are disordered, like laxative use and extreme detox teas and intentional dehydration and extreme calorie cutting in combination with increased exercise, and these factors that are dangerous and that are disordered. It's really hard to be able to recognize and draw the line when our culture and stigma has allowed it for so many years.
So to tie this to 2025 and some of the things I've been seeing on the news, do you think, and this is just an opinion, it doesn't have to get too political, but it's in your lane. SecDef HegsDef is talking about, getting the military back fit again. The Air Force PT test is going from 1.5 to 2 miles. Now they're doing tape measures on your birthday, like, happy birthday, don't eat cake, go get measured. And I'm like, so do you think this will exacerbate this issue more because we're trying to make our military great again? Because now we kind of, at least from my opinion, we got laxed in a sense, and we really got big in the sense of other branches. I mean, I know Air Force guys and women, they're like, and it's not, and to what I know, it's like they just let it lax and go. Do you think it's now going to cause the exact opposite? Like, we'll look better, but we'll be messed up here and here. Do you think that because of his new movement, you think it'll get worse or better? Either or?
That that is such a timely question, Daniel. Just last week, my story was publicized, and it got picked up in military.com and NavyTimes.com and the Marine
Congrats.
Corps pages. Thank you. If you look in the comment section, there are some pretty harsh conversations in there, and so I've been having this very conversation about that. The article did quote Secretary Hegseth saying, he wants the military fit, not fat. And that's a lot of where the questions in the comments come in. So I'm really glad that this question actually came up, because you really hit the nail on the head. It's important that we know that the opposite of fit is not fat, and the opposite of fat is not fit. And so we can't define fitness by archaic, arbitrary numbers and standards, height, weight standards, or BMI, or the BCA, because even when people are meeting that, like I never failed my weigh in or my BCA.
Right.
However, the things that I have done to my body to shrink it to make sure that not only am I passing, but I'm passing the way a senior chief should, as small as I could be, as professional as I could be, those things. Um, we, when you do those things to shrink your body, right, the ones that we just talked about and normalize, that
Mhm.
can put you in a state of what we call low energy availability, and that puts your brain into brain fog, delayed decision making, delayed
Mhm.
morale, or decreased morale, things like that. And so that's why we want to define, is that fitness, is meeting those numbers even at the expense of those other things, is that fitness? Is that military readiness? I argue no. I argue that fitness should be whole health, mental, physical, spiritual, all of the pieces, whole health all together is the fitness that we want and that we need, to get after what I believe Secretary Hegseth's goal is, right? Is a ready force. We all want a ready force. We all want a ready force. And through this administration, there was another executive order that came out that said that eating disorders are non-compatible with military service. And I can't argue against that or for that. I think it's a case by case basis. There was
Yeah.
many years that I served, and I served very, very well. And then there was years that I probably should not have been serving. And I wish that my leadership had been able to recognize and see that. But when I
Mhm.
look when I look at that executive order, I do have to ask myself, what are the possible consequences that could come from this? And eating disorders already have such stigma and shame around
They
them,
do.
and secretiveness. And the number one cause of death for somebody with an eating disorder is suicide. And so,
Yeah.
we really don't want something else that could threaten our careers and push us into silence about something, because that's not going to have us have less service members with an eating disorder. That's going to have us have less service members with an eating disorder getting treatment and support. And that's far more dangerous.
So to now maybe put you in his seat to have you a little imagination. So I want you to pretend that they came over and said, "We're going to elect you for 30 days to be the Secretary of Defense." And you have this passion of helping veterans and military to break this eating disorder, be healthy, comprehensive airman health. I'm going to use this Air Force because I'm going to call it comprehensive sailor health, whatever brand it is. What do you think would you do and make it a comprehensive health? What would be considered healthy and to be lethal?
Absolutely. So, while I would love that job for 30 days, I would go in there knowing what my lived experience is and what I could do with that. And so, what would I do for eating disorders among service members? First of all, in 2023, the SERVE Act was passed, and with that makes mandatory eating disorder education for military leadership. Although it was passed into law, it hasn't yet been implemented by the Department of Defense. So
Mhm.
that would be my first step. I would implement the SERVE Act. and make sure that military leadership is getting this, basic eating disorder 101 knowledge, just like we get on PTS or, suicide prevention, depression, all of those things. We don't have to be experts or be able to diagnose anybody, but we need to be able to recognize these things and know how to, get support. So number
Mhm.
one would be education, and number two would be prevention. Let's make sure that when service members come in at boot camp, at their first training, let's make sure that the command fitness leaders that are administrating these, body composition assessments, because the military needs standards, absolutely, but we need human factor and education behind the standards.
Yeah.
So I would say education and prevention would be really, really important, especially even if we maintain the fact that eating disorders are non-compatible with military service, then that tells me even more that we need to stop this before it begins. Stop exactly what we talked about with that breeding ground. Let
Mhm.
young people know, as they come in, like, hey, you're going to be weighed twice a year in front of your peers. And you're going to see some other things, that people do that have been normalized, and these are the reasons why you don't want to do them, right? And these are, the consequences of doing them, and so on, and provide that education. I can't tell you how many people that I've talked to that have said, I've gone my whole, even leaders, I've gone my whole career and have never spoken about eating disorders. And knowing that a third of females and a fifth of males in the military are struggling with this, the conversations have to happen.
Yeah. And if you actually find them out and you go, let's just say there's certain actions that our government has done to really clean up house in the United States. I won't go into that political thing, but if we did the same thing for eating disorders, we wouldn't be lethal as a force. If we said like, oh, well, you did this one time or did that one time, depending on what the DSM says now in the DSM-5, we would eliminate a majority of our force. So I think that's a good comprehension because we do skip on a lot of topics. We wait until it's a fire and then the topic gets briefed. Risk management's the most recent one that came at least to us. And then we have this creepy guy with a stash from the 90s video we're watching about peanut butter sandwiches on risk management. And we're like, okay, I can't even take this seriously in that particular regard. So it's has to be regular and habitual learning. So it's very interesting that it's kind of, I guess it gives your nonprofit work, but it's kind of scary on how much work you could potentially get just because of a regulation or a directive in that particular regard. So, in your experience, like, did you discover these people that had these struggles before or after service? Because, in a sense, if I had to imagine being you for a moment, I'm thinking it's hiddenness. Already, it's hard enough to be a female in the military, and then you get up in rank, and then you get up to E7 and above, and it's performance, it's metrics, how you look, polished, perfect mask. And now you're struggling with this for like 30 years. Did you find these people before or after? Or is it because you had to be so hidden yourself that you really couldn't help people? I'm just curious on that.
Both. Wow. Um, you could tell my story for me. So yes, since I came in the service already having been hospitalized for an eating disorder, I came in eating disorder informed. And we talked about my first day of school being 9/11. And I
Mhm.
feel like we saw a shift there in how we spoke about post-traumatic stress. Up until, right around 9/11, we always thought it was the generation before us. We were not
Mhm.
educated on the fact that it could be left and right, shipmate to shipmate, peer to peer, our bosses, our subordinates. And so I saw a shift in the conversation around that,
Mhm.
and how we educated each other and learned to at least know the warning signs and the resources. And so I always kind of thought that the eating disorder conversation was going to be right behind it, right? Because eating disorders have a higher mortality rate than PTS. So
Wow.
I really thought the eating disorder conversation was coming soon,
Mhm.
year after year. And about halfway through my career, I started holding like eating disorder awareness fairs. February is eating disorder awareness month. And I would hold these different fairs and bring in different doctors to speak and hold, different opportunities for learning, whatever command I was at, just, at whatever collateral duty I was on. But I was walking a really fine line because I was still super secretive about my own eating disorder. And so I
Yeah.
didn't want to expose myself.
Mhm.
But during that process, and I made chief right at my 10-year mark.
Ooh,
And
you're a fast burner.
I was driven. I was really into discipline and perfectionism, which, by the way, are both things that really drive an eating disorder. So you
Mm.
can see hand in hand where that happened. And so I didn't want to like expose myself or threaten my career or lose my career. But because I was already eating disorder informed and because I was holding these different kind of events, I absolutely was able to see that in many of the people I was serving with. I could
Mhm.
recognize it in them.
Wow. And that must be huge. It's like you're helping, but you're hurting at the same time. You're helping those people get aware and getting the information, but you're hurting and you're like, me too, me too. And it makes it difficult. And until there's like a movement, because that's what happened in the SAPER world. So sexual assault and response for our civilian audience, that's people that get sexually assaulted or molested or anything else. And it's called a military sexual trauma. I used to teach those courses, and it took me until I was doing, I think I did 45 courses in 90 days. So almost every other day I was doing courses and everything else. And they put me on orders, and I realized I was one of those people. So, and I was teaching it. So even though I was, SARC aware, I guess we'll just call it that I didn't realize that I was that person. And until I was able to profess that, and I used the example of, like they said, it's 1 out of 3 women, 1 out of 7 men. I said, you have somebody in the room right now. I
Mhm.
wouldn't confess it was me, but I was able to get that off my shoulders and off my back in that particular regard. But it seems we somehow now it's empowered that I can talk about it. Other people like Janae Sergio and other people that are veterans there in the community. But then we kind of find another thing to hide behind the curtain. It just seems we're that particular guard. So when were you able to fully do what I did and come forward and say, hey, it's me too, and I want to heal?
Yeah, so I definitely experienced that Me Too movement as well. So, right after my retirement, when I was trying to find myself and my purpose, I spoke to my command master chief. He was actually the man that held an intervention on me and medevaced me back to the States and made sure that I went inpatient for my eating disorder. So, I was speaking to him at that time when I was lost after my retirement. And I said,
Mm,
well, I want to make a difference. And he pulled my card as any good mentor would. And he said, Leah, you're never going to be able to make a difference or to truly heal in a way that you want to as long as you're still being secretive about it. So I
mm,
thought to myself, and I got a little offended by that. I don't know why. It really just it caught me off guard. So in a moment of spite, and with a glass of wine, of course, I made a decision to share my story on social media all at once. So I was still being very secretive about that. Most of my family did not know that I had almost died multiple times from my eating disorder.
yeah.
And so I shared it on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Everybody at once, I shared my story. And it really did create a Me Too movement. And people started reaching out to me and sharing their story like really bravely. And they would say, that's me or my sister, or my brother, my shipmate, my boss. And, they would share their story and then they would ask me, like, oh, okay. So I finally shared it. Okay, so now what? And, reflecting on my own service and my experience, there was not a good now what answer for me to give them, which
Yeah.
is how we led to founding Sea Waves. Sea Waves was the answer to the now what question for everybody that came forward.
So let's get into that pivot today. So we're talking about sea waves and everything else. So I found out pre-show this is an acronym. So what's the acronym first?
It's support, education, awareness, wellness, advocacy, validation for eating disorders and suicide prevention.
That's why it has to be. That's why it had to be sea waves. That's a mouthful. Woo! That is a mouthful.
Exactly. Sea Waves just flows easier, and plus, I'm a nautical girl, I'm a Navy girl, so it really aligned with who I am and with my branding and as a person, and learning that I had to be a face to this story, right? And that was really uncomfortable for me. We talked about, me being a photographer, and I was always on the other side of the camera.
Yeah.
It was a crazy kind of pivot for me to realize that it was important for me to own my story and be a part to show the importance of why Sea Waves is here.
It's almost like your whole entire photography career is that you were exposing light to everything else except for who you are and your struggles. And now Sea Waves is now you bringing light to your struggles and who you are so you can be a blessing to others. In a sense, you're that lighthouse. I'm utilizing your photo in the back, that you're the
That's
lighthouse
exactly
now and
it.
exposing that light so they can come to that proverbial island, in a sense, that proverbial land, and then be able to rest and recover and be able to heal at the same time. Because I would think, and I'm imagining Navy because I've only been Air Force, is that you guys get exhausted on your deployment. So when you finally get that time to get that R&R, I bet you if you see a lighthouse to whatever your next terminal or getting into the port, you're like, that's super exciting. So it's the same thing, I think, metaphorically speaking, with sea waves, is that you're being that lighthouse and that R&R for those people to heal. Would that be an accurate statement?
Absolutely. We say that the lighthouse is shining a light on eating disorders in the military, as well as shining a light for those that are still in the dark, letting them know that there is light. I do a lot more speaking engagements these days, and my keynote speech is called "Need a Light, Be a Light," and we look at that. I speak to it with two different punctuations. The first one is with a semicolon. We know in the mental health world that the semicolon stands for "Your story doesn't end here." And I think about the years that I was in the dark, or I was silenced, or I was hiding this beast that was just destroying me. And I think of the day that my I was inpatient in the hospital. I was living on an NG tube for almost two
Wow.
years. I couldn't eat any food. I only had an NG tube to provide my body nutrients. And the treatment team called my family in for a meeting because I was in another state. They asked my
Mhm.
family to come in for the meeting, and at that meeting, they offered me palliative care, and they told me that my eating disorder had progressed for so many years and seemed to be treatment resistant, and that they didn't think that there was much more that could be done to help me, and that
Wow.
I should just focus on being comfortable until the end. And I got mad, and I thought to myself, my story doesn't end here. This isn't how my story ends.
Mhm.
And that was rock bottom for me, and I turned it around. So we say need a light, be a light, because I needed a light. The semicolon, my story doesn't end here, and then be a light. Now I've decided I'm going to be that voice. I'm that voice. I'm going to use my voice, and I'm that voice for other people that may not be able to use theirs now.
Yeah, that's huge. 2 years. That's like, were you on TDRL at that point? Were you temporary disabled on that retirement list potentially?
I was. It was on and off for 2 years. It was a couple of months in, couple weeks out, really. I was never really out of the hospital very long during that 2-year period. And at the end of that is when they offered me my medical retirement, which was right at my 20-year point.
Mhm.
It was sad. It was disappointing because um I wanted to keep going. I was ready to make Master Chief. I was going to do this for a long time.
Mhm.
And my body and my mind, it gave out on me, but it was time. And that's when we talk about like that was the time. And the medical retirement, came right at 20 years. So, it was the perfect time to close that chapter.
Yeah, yeah. That's wow. That is like huge. It almost sounds like Nat Martin. Nat Martin's been on our show, and she's Air Force and had very similar because she was on grade E7 going on pressing forward, and her medical issues basically had her to do a kind of forced retirement in that particular guard. So she's still in the struggle and the fight. She's another one going to MIC, Military Influencer Conference. For our listeners, definitely if you want to leverage that, you're speaking there. I got blessed to speak there. So that's September 21st to 24th. So if you want to catch us, you need to go out to the Military Influencer Conference. It's not too late to go buy tickets. We do not get paid to uplift this brand. I don't. I should. I'm just kidding. But I've uplifted it for a long time. But we are excited to go out there and definitely. When is your speaking time, by the way? Do you have your time locked down?
I believe it's that Wednesday at 11. I need to look it up. But for those that can't make it to Atlanta, the week before is the Vet Social, and that's all virtual
Oh, yeah.
and free and online. And I'm speaking at that one as well, and talking absolutely about the same topic of how to take your purpose and passion. And for me, it ended up to be through a nonprofit, but I wasn't sure of that at the time. And so we'll be speaking at that event too, to just kind of talk through with veterans that have considered entrepreneurship as their next chapter, and looking at possibly nonprofits being part of that chapter for them. So we'll be speaking at Vet Social. I'll be speaking at the Military Influencers Conference, and then I'm also the keynote speaker at the 11th annual Orchid Gala for women veterans. So that's another
Wow.
opportunity to connect as well.
I need to glean up your coattails. It's taken me 6 years to get on Mick and these other tours. I just need to go over and ride that wave with you because it's been a long time. I'm very appreciative of it. But yeah, I'll be at the Vet Social with my wife also September 12th and 13th. So go to Vet Social. I think it's .com. It could be .org. We'll probably have to get that in the show notes, but
I
that
think
one
it's
is free.
vetsocialsummit.com, I
Yeah,
think.
Vet
Mhm.
Social Summit. Yeah, we'll have to get that right in the show notes and everything else. But definitely opportunities if you want to connect to either one of us in that particular guard, either virtually or in person. But Atlanta is not too far. Get yourself a train. It's a beautiful ride, especially if you live in Dover, Delaware. If you're going up, it's a lot easier. Like your train systems are a lot better going from Orlando, Tampa to Atlanta. For us, we have to drive until we go narcoleptic and then we're there the next morning. So it's definitely a beautiful time to go out there. Got a couple more questions to close out this interview. So the struggles were in your military career. The struggles were when you were getting out. The struggles still can be going and real. They might be looking different now. You had some healing in some things. Now, what maybe became the secret fuel, or what is your secret fuel when the pressure and tough times come? What was that aha moment, or when you hit those things, what is that aha moment that gets you to keep going?
So we talked about need a light, be a light with the semicolon. So my secret fuel for pressure and tough times is need a light, be a light with a question mark. So be the person that you once needed at that time. I always wished for a mother. My mother was not emotionally or mentally or physically available to be a mother to me. And so that's part of what helped me push through is I became a mother, and I became a foster mother. At one point I had eight teenagers at the same time. I don't recommend that for everybody, but it goes back to be that person that you needed. If you needed a leader, an intrusive leader, a supportive leader, become that person. Because so many times we're finding out that when you're focused on shining your lighthouse light for others, inherently it lights your path too.
That's a beautiful thing to go over and think about. Sometimes you have to go over and become what you're looking for, and then that feeds the soul and feeds the spirit. So then you can go others and everything else. So I think that's a beautiful summary of that question. I don't need to expound on that one at all. So, our final question we give to everybody is the three superhero tactics. So, either thinking with the current clients that you go around dealing with, or maybe thinking of your past self, because you said the struggle has been like 30 years. What do you think if you only had like 90 seconds with somebody, either your past self or someone maybe in that MIC, and you meet somebody that has an eating disorder and they're just hidden? What three tactics could you go over and give them to go from that surviving mentality to that thriving mentality?
So, my first superhero tactic is to realize that as human beings, we are not wired to do this alone. We're not supposed to. Any of this whole journey. So, find somebody, anybody that is trusting and that you can confide in, and take the leap and do the journey with them. We are not supposed to be on this journey alone. That would be the first thing. The second thing would be to find what fills your cup and what heals you. I really had to hyper focus on self care, on finding different things. And self care means so much more than a bubble bath with candles, right? Self care could be, your feet in the grass and time alone and things like that. So find the thing that fills you and refills you and recharges you. And then the third thing is find ways to pay it forward. Be kind, intentional. And when again, like when you start doing those acts of kindness and pay it forward and take care of people, things just start to align for you that you could never have dreamed of or planned for or gotten in other ways.
I think those are beautiful things. I don't have a nice bubble bathtub to go over to do some of those things, but I get what you go over me, and I'm pretty sure the audience can go figure that out. So, Leah, I hope I got it right this time. Thank you for coming on our show and going over and uplifting you and uplifting what you're going over and doing. We're going to give you the floor one more time. So, we're going to go maximum screen on this. So, you get the floor and you get to close out our show. So, anything you want to uplift before we go over and close the credits?
I just wanted to say that anybody that is struggling with their relationship with food or your relationship with your body, you deserve support. You deserve a life worth living. You deserve quality of life. And so, as I said, you're not meant to go on any of these journeys alone. So, if you're looking for that place for information, guidance, support, please reach out to Sea Waves. And we are here to help you on any part of that journey. It doesn't matter if you served before 9/11 or after. It doesn't matter what your discharge is. It doesn't matter if it was your great uncle's second cousin that served and you are a family member of a service member. Please know that Sea Waves is here. Reach out and we will connect you to the support that you deserve.